Good morning, everyone. This is Mortgage Pros 411. I'm Audrey Boycino with Kevin Casey, and today we are joined by none other than Marty Allred, CCO of American Pacific. How are you this morning, Marty?
I'm fabulous. Thanks for having me.
We love you. You're always a good go-to when I'm wondering about, compliance issues and what would Marty do. So we really appreciate you being here. All right, before we do our dive into everything, we have a lot going on this week. So after just 45 days of no data, now we have lots of data. We're playing catch up. So tomorrow we have CPI for October and November. Very exciting. And then Friday we have existing home sales in Q2 QCEW, quarterly census of employment and wages. And I swear, if you put a gun to my head and said, tell me what that acronym means, I would have to really think about it. I don't know why I can't internalize it, but whatever. Okay, the 10-year today is 4.15 last I looked, so a little better, but not fabulous. We'll see, but at least mortgage-backed securities are in the green. We love that. Uh, it is, what day is it today? December 16th?
16th,
If
all
you
day.
haven't done your NMLS, God help you if you haven't done your education, and I know you're out there, people. I know you are. Then you need to definitely get on it, and that's enough on that. If you're
Actually, I do have a little quick thing on that.
oh boy, here we go.
Well, I have four different licenses. I'm amazed at how quickly some are. So the DRE, I submitted them all on the same day. California DRE, the next within moments, boom, I was good to go. I guess that's what the $300 bonus on top of what my license renewal fee gets you is. But the California DFPI, which has the same $360 fee to register, they took over 3 weeks to process my thing, which I thought was, wait, they're charging me that same rush fee and they don't get me anything else. Oregon, Washington, they only charge what, $69, and yeah, they took their sweet time, but it wasn't terrible, like a week or so. Um, so it's if you are a California DRE person, you might be a little bit too late.
Okay, so the bottom line here is Kevin likes to, yeah, is get your stuff, get it all done.
Get it done.
Very much
Get
depends
it
on what state
done.
you're in.
Oh,
Okay.
the number one reason why, you know what it shows up on your
Oh
license
my God.
when you
Okay.
don't renew it on time. It's their permanent record.
Okay. So, in other news, just in case you're feeling festive and you're in the Bay Area, in the North Bay, which is San Rafael, on Thursday will be a California Association of Mortgage Professionals party. So, December 18th, I can't remember where it is. It's at that cute little bar. We go every year. If you want
Fourth
information, they're
Street,
sending
go
out
look online,
notices.
you'll find it.
What?
Go just drive down Fourth Street. It'll
4th
be the
Street.
one
It's
with
on
people
4th Street. Yeah,
pouring out in front of it.
we're really doing a great job here. Okay, so today we had the BLS jobs report for October and November. Can you believe it? Finally, finally, finally. So, what did it show? It showed that for November we had 64,000 job creations, which is not great, but but
Well, it's better than zero, but
October has now been revised down to, are you ready for this? In case you hadn't seen this, you're going to drop your jaw. 105,000 job losses. That's not great. And then it
mm-mm.
was very interesting. We're going to get to the Fed comments that Uncle Jerome made last week after the Fed decision. But one of the things he said is that they are aware that the Fed is over, not the Fed, that BLS is overstating jobs by about 60,000 jobs per month
Per month. So the
per report.
54,000 jobs created is really a 6,000 job loss.
So he said that it will be that they are that we've basically been losing 20,000 jobs a month since April, which I thought was interesting. So, A, good to know that they are aware of this. That's promising. And also important to note that, just in case you weren't aware, job market's not great, not great. So there you go. So federal government has cut 240,000 jobs since into 2025 as of November. Unemployment rate 4.6% now. It's the highest in 5 years. It was 3.5% before COVID. Did I mention that they cut a quarter? I mean, the 25 basis points was a given. We know that, but they did do it. And also he was much more dovish this time in his comments. I mean, the last one, man, he blew everyone out of the water. So it was better. Wage growth is not it is outpacing home price growth. So that's something. So it's like the wages are keeping up with actually they're ahead of appreciation. Pre-COVID, I thought this was interesting. This was from Dr. Lawrence Yun, who comes on our show regularly. Pre-COVID, the average price per hour was $28.34. Now we're at $36.86. It's a 30% gain. But CPI, Consumer Price Index, is up 29%. So it's kind of it's just a wash. Like there's no improvement in the consumer's living situation at all. What another note from Dr. Yoon was there are 7.3 more workers now than pre-COVID, but home sales are 75% of the pre-COVID normals. So it just shows that we have all this pent-up demand with people who need housing and they haven't done anything because they don't have, anyway. So there you go.
Wow. I'm just
Jobs.
thankful to have a job.
Right. You, Marty, unlike us, get a paycheck every 2 weeks, I presume.
Yeah.
I hope. I really hope for your sake. So,
So
Yeah,
far,
as long
so
as you
far, so
can't be
good.
replaced by AI, Marty.
what?
But I'm thankful to loan originators like yourselves because without them, I wouldn't have a compliance job anyway. So thank you.
We
Yeah,
keep you
well, we always
busy.
we always
Keep,
we need compliance, that's for sure.
yeah.
Um, National Association of Home Builders, second month in a row, we had improvement. So that's something. Retail sales for October, it was flat. But it was because there was a huge decline in auto sales. And once you removed autos, retail sales were still up 4/10, which I mean, consumers out there, ka-ching, ka-ching, ka-ching. It's all in credit cards, but whatever. Um, Fed chair. The front runner, Kevin has been very excited because he has two possibilities of a Fed chair being Kevin. So we have now flip-flopped though, because before Kevin Hassett was ahead, but now the projections are showing that Kevin Warsh is going to be the new Fed chair. And here's the thing, if he is, we'll see. We should know by Christmas, we were told he was a Fed governor like 15 years ago, and he like people like him and he's respected, and so he
Of
might be
course
a
they
good
like
choice.
him.
So we'll
His
see.
name is Kevin. Of course they like him.
Right, right, because no Kevin in the
Heaven, such a
history of the
powerful
universe has
name.
ever been anything other than amazing.
Yeah.
So yeah, so we got that going for us. Um, Cotality home equity report for Q3. Average homeowner has $300,000 in equity. And this is important because we keep getting these reports. Oh, the market is going to crap. Oh, appreciation levels are going to, they're falling, they're decreasing, the values are going down. And we know that it's very pockety depending on where you are in the country. Totally get it. But out of 136 million total households in the country, 91 million households own their home. That's a 67% homeownership rate. 56.5 million homes have a mortgage. That's 62%. And of all of that, 1.2 million people are underwater or households are underwater. So it's 1.3% of total owned houses and 2%, 2.1% of homes with a mortgage. 15 years ago, we had a 25% of homeowners were underwater. So I just want to say this because when you are talking to your borrowers and or the realtors, I don't, yeah, and they're saying things like, oh, yeah, the market's going to crash. I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait. Don't wait. There are very few people, historically speaking, underwater. And the idea that we're going to have some huge crash is a disaster. And I'm hearing people I respect in the mortgage business say, oh, we need a big correction. I'm like, oh my God,
Well,
you're smart.
apparently, aren't we the most affordable housing right now? I heard
Oh,
that
in
stat.
3 years, Kevin. It doesn't mean it's affordable. It's the best affordability in 3 years.
Well, in three
Right.
years. Okay, well,
Yeah,
that's better than nothing.
it is. I mean, we're getting better, right? I mean, this year was better than the last year. Last year was better than the year before. I mean, it's been a rough 3 years.
Well,
I
isn't
mean,
it that Brian Buffini said that we're coming back to the rhythm of 2019?
That's right. That's right. And that we've been in an artificial market for 5 years, which is 100% true. But we could even go back farther than that because we also had, I mean, we've had so much government infusion of liquidity and things that brought down the rates to levels that they shouldn't have been at. People have enjoyed really low rates for so long, and it's not realistic or sustainable. And again, it's a return to normal. And again, I hesitate with the word normal. I'm sorry it even came out of my mouth because I also think we need to get the idea of, oh, things are going to go back to normal kind of out of our head because things aren't the same. Marty, thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. And affordability is a loaded word right now. It's a buzzword, but it might be true in some cases in terms of housing prices, but then you have the insurance crisis that's making things unaffordable. So you've got this yin and yang. So it who even knows what affordability really even means today? And
Hmm.
you have to look at all of the layers of housing, to see what that really means.
Yeah.
Because sure, there might be pockets where prices are, decreasing and normalizing again, whatever that means. Um, but you may have high offset with insurance costs or property taxes or what have you. So it's just, I would say take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah. I was talking to an HOA manager over the weekend at a party, and he is telling. I knew he had a lot of issues before about his current HOA. They had really got hit with insurance. Their premiums went from $30,000 a year to $1 million a year, and it just kind of wiped out the association.
Yeah,
Um,
that's
and
more than triple.
they finally got insurance now at a normal like $30,000 range again,
Yeah,
but they have no reserves. Their HOAs are $1,000 a month. And it was just like, wow, that's
yeah,
such a challenge.
yeah, yeah. You add it all up and you layer it, and it's like, what really is affordable?
Hmm.
What really does that mean? You know, which is which it makes it's a challenge for
Well,
lenders to do that. Even with down payment assistance programs, which are really helpful, you still have, taxes and insurance and those factors
mhm.
that you have to
And
weigh.
a lot
And
of them buy HOAs or
eh,
condos, and then they get hit
condos,
with.
yeah, you've got the HOA fees, you have the condo fees. Yeah, so it's really hard, to know exactly what affordability means and what that looks like today.
It's such a buzzword that when we go visit legislators, I always ask them what they think it means. And you should see the deer in the headlights look on their faces when you ask that question because they toss it around so often. And it's such a word that they've come very comfortable with as far as talking about what they're doing to help the consumer. But the reality is, a lot of them don't really understand what it means. And so it's an interesting conversation. And I think also leaves out things like how much are you paying for daycare? How many times a week are you eating out? I talk about this constantly because it drives me crazy that we're so fixated on what is the rate. And there are all these other factors out that matter so much more than rate. I mean, granted, do I want 8%? No. Am I much happier at 6? Yes. Do I think this is reasonable? Yes. Am I dying for them to go even lower? No, because it is just I think that this is reasonable, and I think we need to get used to what reasonable looks like and then just go from there and focus on things like appreciation. Focus on the fact that Fannie Mae and Pulsonomics just came out with their Q4 home price expectation survey. The median forecast for appreciation over the next year is 2.4% and 20% in the next 5 years. So this is Pulsonomics
But
is the top 150 economists in the country. We also have the NAR and a few other places saying that they think that appreciation is going to be somewhere in the 4% range. Those are really normal, sustainable appreciation rates that we would like to see versus, again, when we talk about returning to normal, in that context, we're talking about coming off of 20% or 30% appreciation, which is a disaster, right? Because what we need to focus on with our borrowers is if you buy a home today for $500,000, that means in 5 years, it'll be worth $100,000 more. So that is a great investment that you're putting your money towards every single month with a return that is, it's going to be great. So let's focus
That's
on that.
actually a great return because if you buy a
Hmm.
house for 500,000, you put 20% down, that's $100,000, and you double that $100,000 in 5 years. That's a great return on your
Oh,
money.
I see what you're saying. Okay, I see what you're saying. I'm like, wait, didn't I just, okay, yeah, got it. Okay, on the other side of that, student loan debt, not great. So Financial Times is saying that 9 million student loan borrowers missed one or more payments this year. That's 20% of all borrowers. That the average drop to their credit score is 100 points. And 10% of them have seen credit scores drop below 620, which is bad because, as we know, the average age of the first time buyer is now 40. And so they're missing out on those years from, I don't know, I think I bought my first house when I was 26 or something like that. And I was a single mom and I bought a house and it was hard. Oh my God, it was so hard. So, and I didn't make much money on that one. I will be clear about that. But the idea that you're missing out on that equity appreciation, all of that from, for those extra 14 years, it's not good. We really need to help this cohort understand that it is better to make sacrifices on other things like the fancy cars. Also, maybe help our legislators understand that maybe don't add a bunch of extra safety things like controlling our speeds to 70 miles per hour that jack up the price of cars that make everything much more expensive. You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
anyway, not that we've also discussed my speed issue on here before, so I will keep it moving.
I do think though that that kind of speaks to we need more financial literacy education in high schools, and in college, so that, teenagers and young 20s somethings are educated. They at least have some awareness around financial literacy matters and can start making better educated decisions. I'm just a huge proponent of, financial literacy education for teens and 20 somethings because even though it just may help them stop and think and make better choices or plan things out a little farther than advance, than they otherwise would have.
Exactly. I think at this point though, we need to include, the 30-year-olds, the 40-year-olds, the 50-year-olds, the 60-year-olds, because we see an inordinate number of people who are older who don't have their financial stuff together at all.
Hmm.
So it is something that we need to have, but it's so hard to get that moving. California passed a measure. There is going to be some financial literacy
There
in the
is coming up.
schools. Yeah.
Hmm.
So
Hawaii and Alaska already have it. And I know only because I have created a mortgage course for a company that does all this and has all the classes in the high schools across the country. Um,
so it is something that we need to, yeah, focus on.
and then the idea of balancing a checkbook, that's
Nobody does
one
that.
thing. No one needs that anymore. No one writes a check anymore.
I don't even have checks. I literally don't have checks.
But they should be signing into their account regularly
And
and
Yes.
checking
looking
it and
for, yep.
looking
Yes.
for, I don't know, fraudulent
I mean,
transactions,
like
fees
the
that don't make
Alaska airline
sense.
tickets I bought the
You
other
know,
day. I'm like, wow, how did I
that's
buy
like the
these?
new version of balancing your checkbook. At
Yeah.
least sign in
Yeah.
regularly and check your account.
I have
Yeah.
this conversation about with my borrowers about opening their mortgage statements. I'm like, even if you do put
Hmm.
yourself on auto pay, you need to look at your mortgage statement and make sure your payment is posting. And I mean, even the
And your pay
review.
stubs, make sure that things are applying correctly to your pay stubs.
Yeah.
Companies notoriously mess those up. And then
Yeah.
they
Hmm.
hit you with, I had someone I was talking to yesterday, they had a HSA, but the company was only taking out 50% of what they were supposed to take out of the HSA. The company came back and said, "Oh, well, we'll fund your account for you, so you can withdraw the amount you intended, but we'll over the next year we're going to take it out." I go, "That doesn't work because you're going to exceed the HSA limits for the next year, so you won't be able to deduct that amount. You need to like write them a check today to cover what they didn't pay this year in your paycheck, which is like, it's the last thing you want to do at the, December 16th. But that was the only way that that person could then be able to deduct their HSA deductions for
All
the.
right. So going back to the Fed meeting to finish up with all of that, Jerome Powell noted that inflation is coming down. They think that the impact of the tariffs should be finally working through the system by Q1 of 2026. They think that without the tariffs, that the inflation is really more in the low twos than where it is right now, which is the high twos. So I he sounds like they really understand what is happening in the market, despite some of the information you get from some of these data points. So the other thing they said was they started last week buying 40 billion per month in treasury bills, which is really interesting. So
That's
then,
very interesting.
yeah, as far as the dot plots go, where every other meeting we get the survey of what the governors are thinking they're going to do in the next year for cuts. So it was so all over the board. So three of them want a 25 basis point hike. Four of them want zero cuts. Four want 25 basis points. Four want 50. Two want 75. One wants 100. And one wants 150. So I can guess who the 150 is, but I cannot figure out who the 100 is.
How did they get to the consensus of 0.25?
So the median estimate for cut is one cut next year. But they're all over the place, so who knows?
That's all over the map. Wow.
All
Well,
over the place.
but the big thing
Mhm.
is they're buying mortgage-backed securities again. And that is why we got lower rates.
No, they're not. No, Kevin, they're not
Oh,
buying mortgage-backed
oh,
securities.
they're
They're
not. They're
buying
buying
treasuries.
treasuries. Thank
Yeah.
you. Okay.
So, but the thought is that Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent is going to buy shorter term treasuries, and then there will be more appetite for the longer term mortgage-backed securities. Okay, I think I got that right. So if I didn't, someone will, I'm sure, correct me. Okay, so Marty, we want to talk about, compliance things, you being a chief compliance officer and all.
So
So
fun.
first of all, I would like to state Marty is not an attorney. She doesn't play one at work. She doesn't play one here. She is not giving you legal advice. She is a chief compliance officer. So Marty, would you like to add on anything to that?
No, that's great. Yeah, thank you. And some chief compliance officers are also attorneys, but some are not, and I am not. So just
Got
wanted
it.
to make sure that that's known, that I'm not, saying anything from a legal standpoint or offering legal advice. Yeah, so thanks for that
You're
disclosure.
offering everyday experience as a compliance officer and how loan officers can mess things up.
Well,
Oh,
for a
you
company
know,
that's licensed in what? Are we licensed in 49 states? Is that right?
49 states and Puerto Rico, waiting on New York.
We've been waiting
Every
on New York, Marty.
everybody tells us not to even go to New York, but hey, we're 2.5 years in on our wait for a license. So we're gonna hang in there and get the license. So yeah, New
What?
York takes a long time.
Why
Yeah.
For
is that?
anybody, any lender out there that's listening that's not in New York and wants to go to New York, you gotta, put yourself on a 3 to 5 year track.
What is it that makes it take so long in New York?
Gosh, if we only knew. It appears to be maybe just staff constraints,
Oh,
uh, maybe old processes. I'm not sure. We
all
do
right.
have help from a very reputable law firm, and even they can't fast track it. So
Wow.
if somebody says they can fast track it, don't just
Don't
believe
believe it.
them right out of the gate
Got
because
it.
it does not appear to be true.
Wow.
But
Interesting.
hopefully next year
All
we'll
right.
have our New York approval, and then we can say 50 states and Puerto Rico.
Okay. So do you we have a comment from one of our listeners. He says the real answer is local protectionism. Marty's too wise to say it on here. So uh and there are states that have interesting rules around whether you can do a loan there. Kevin knows that Washington has a weird um
Rule that
about
you
doing loan.
can't,
Tell him what
you're
it
a
is, Kevin.
Washington resident, you can't buy property in another state, even investment property, unless you use a Washington licensed loan officer.
No,
Just
not Washington license. They live there or something, right? It's a
no,
residence
no.
permit, isn't it?
If you live in Washington, you have to use a Washington licensed loan officer to buy a property in other states. They also have to be licensed in that state also.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Oregon
Oh,
also has that rule.
Oh,
So
really?
yes, some attorneys, not myself because I'm not an attorney, uh, will challenge that with Oregon and Washington. So I've heard. Um, but yes, be careful because Oregon and Washington both have regulations that indicate any Washington or Oregon consumer, even if they're purchasing in, you know, New York, you would have to be licensed in both Washington or Oregon and New York, in order to be able to be the LO of record
Right.
on
And
that.
then there's
So be very careful.
other states have like brick and mortar rules, like Nevada. You have to have an
Yes.
office in
yeah.
Nevada. That makes it tough. And then California is like this open, everybody can lend in. I joke when I became president of the California Association of Mortgage Professionals, I looked at the roster and was like, oh, this is really interesting. It seems like all California, especially DRE licensed loan officers, the one thing they had in common is they typically were not licensed outside of the state of California. And then the one thing that all the other states outside of California, the loan officers had is they all seem to be also licensed in California. It was like totally the opposite of the residents versus the non-residents. Um,
Yeah.
So we
Yeah.
have a comment from Greg here says, why would you want to be in New York? Um, there's a state mortgage tax, an extra 25 basis point charge for a purchase or a refi that goes to the state. And I've heard that with other states too, where they have all these little money grabs all over the place that
yeah,
we don't even know to be grateful for that we don't have here.
yeah.
So
What if I did a refinance way back in the day with New York and they charged 1% tax on the refinance? So it's like, but I'm only charging 1%. Why does the government think that they are entitled to make as much money as the person doing all the work?
Yeah.
welcome to
See?
the government.
Oh, it's going to be so fun.
Yeah.
Can't
So
wait.
Marty, how is it dealing with 49 states and Puerto Rico, wherein you don't have as much of a centralized regulatory agency and it's more at the state level, I would presume. Can you walk us through how that's going and what that is like for you?
Every level, every state is different. They all have their own nuances in terms of licensing, how they regulate, how often they do exams, different reports that they require in addition to the quarterly NMLS call report, in addition to our HMDA reports. They all they're all just different entities operating differently, which is a little bit of job security for compliance folks, but it is really difficult to manage. There's not a whole lot of consistency.
So are you seeing a big are there big differences from state to state as far as enforcement and what they think is important, et cetera? How does that work?
Um, there there are some that are more strict than others. All of them are very dedicated to their state regs, their state disclosures. They're specifically looking for, their state's disclosures in your loan files. And they're also looking for the TRID disclosures and stuff, but a lot of them really focus in on their own state things. They all have their own hot topics. Of course, being in California, we know that per diem. The per diem collection is a hot topic for California DFPI every time they examine.
Wait, hang on. Make sure we're clear on what that means.
Yeah, what's per diem?
The
Well,
per diem,
interest per diem, right?
yeah, interest per diem, and how you collect it. And, in your closing package, there's a disclosure for the borrower to sign that says, are you going to basically only charge me, 1 day per diem or up to 3 days per diem if I'm, funding over a weekend or over a holiday? And the examiners check those disclosures, and then they check against your closing disclosure to make sure that you did not go beyond what the consumer said was allowable in what they chose for their per diem collection.
Oh.
So it's basically a math calculation on every
Mhm.
single loan that you do to make sure that you did not overcharge on per diem interest. So that's a big hot topic for California DFPI examiners. And other states have their own hot topics. South Carolina has their attorney insurance preference form that is very specific and, has to be monitored the entire way through the loan process, to make sure you get it right. So every state kind of has their own hot topic. And then, of course, they're looking at all the federal disclosures too.
So,
Every exam's different.
yeah, I'd imagine. And then you have to deal with every state coming to your office to do all this fun stuff.
Yeah, well, they do it all off-site.
Offline. Yeah.
It's all off-site. I think we've only had two on-site state exams in the last 5 years, but most of it's just done off-site. So, but they are. I mean, there's a lot of talk about the states are filling the void of the CFPB stepping back, potentially, being gone at some point or being folded into another agency. And we're not feeling that yet. I mean, you have to remember that states, even if they want to fill that void, they can't just immediately go out and hire a bunch of examiners. They have their own budgets and everything that they have to work with. So they may be working, towards that to hire more examiners and do more frequent exams and what have you. It's still too early in this administration to really feel that. But it still could happen. And there's a thing called a multi-state exam, which is where several states all at once coordinate an exam for a lender. So you're going through. So instead of an individual states calling you for an exam, and
Hmm.
you may be working on 5, 6, 7 exams at one time in different various stages. But a multi-state exam is where several states say, okay, we're going to go examine this company, and we're going to notify them that this is a multi-state exam. It's happening all at once. So it seems as those may be ramping up a bit more to
Hmm.
try to fill in some of this gap. And that puts a lot of resource constraint on compliance departments, but also just lenders in general, because every department is involved somehow in these exams in terms of deliverables and answering questions and what have you. So I think that we'll probably start to see more multi-state exams going on,
Is
and maybe some states, having the luxury of hiring more examiners and starting to do, more frequent, maybe more arduous exams at some point.
wouldn't it be easier to have a multi-state exam because you're knocking out a whole bunch of states at the same time, or is that not the case?
Well, it's kind of like a double-edged sword. It, a multi-state exam probably takes 3 to 4 months in total to do. So that's a huge weight on a lender to do that. However, the plus side of that, I have heard from a state examiner that when you have a multi-state exam, you then get kind of a 12-month moratorium for the other states, pinging you with individual exams. So it's a lot of concentrated work for 3, 4 months, maybe a little more, but then you may have a 12-month reprieve, So, I guess you could take the good with the bad.
Is there some centralized place where they can go to see who's had an exam and when and where? How would they even know that you've gone through this exam with some other state? They call their friends after work, or I mean,
No, the CSBS, the Conference of State Bank Supervisors,
uh,
they manage and govern all of that. So it's all coordinated.
oh,
And there's part of NMLS, there's a section called the SES, the state exam system. So all of most exams are done through that system. So that's again where states can see. They can look at a lender and see what other states have examined it. They can't see the findings. They can just
right.
see if they've had an exam, and then that's how that's coordinated.
So when
Yeah, you
I know that we broker a fair amount of loans also. So are you ever involved in, would imagine the wholesalers are being examined as well, right? Since they're selling and they're licensed.
I sure
So,
hope the wholesalers are being examined. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
but
I'm
don't
sure they are. They
do you ever
are.
hear from them on the loans that we broker? Does that ever happen?
We never hear from them. All we hear about is when we're examined as a lender, if our brokered loan file doesn't contain everything that the wholesale lender did, we get cited for
Mhm.
missing a loan estimate or a closing disclosure or estate disclosure that maybe the wholesale lender sent, but we didn't have a copy of it. So we just hear about what we're missing from our file, and not that they, have also examined that other wholesale lender. But yes, all wholesale lenders are subject to examination as well.
So Kat
So
and I
just
preach this in our NMLS when we teach NMLS. We are always telling people, brokers, whoever, that the first of all, it all rolls back to our license number. So we are responsible. So even if we are brokering a loan and the wholesaler is sending out the disclosures, we're responsible for what's on the disclosures. We're responsible for all of it. And it must be in the file. And we've been talking about the examiners coming in. So that's confirmation from you that that is a real thing, but because we've been told
Absolutely.
that many
little
times.
background, a little background on me is I got into the mortgage world from the audit side of it. I was actually an auditor for a savings and loan way back in the day. And all as an auditor, you just have your checklist and you have to go into these. We'd go into all these loan files and go through and like, does the loan file have this document? Does it have this document? And that's kind of how they operate. They're not, thinking, oh, is this a good loan or a bad loan? No, it's just like, here's my checklist. Here's the loan file. Go down one, two, three, four. Actually, extremely boring job. Um, well,
So
people
you became a loan officer. Good
yeah,
for
I'm getting the call. Yeah,
you.
yeah. Why do that?
Makes you a very compliant one. But you're
I've
right in that state examiners are not looking at the underwriting of a
No,
file. They're
nope.
not looking at whether the consumer qualified, whether you met all the ATR/QM requirements for the loan. They're look to see that we have those policies, but the state examiners are not looking at the underwriting of the loan. That is where CFPB or Fannie, Freddie, FHA, VA, USDA, they're all looking at the underwriting of the file.
And we
Okay,
would
so I think
teach.
it's important to note for people who don't realize that it isn't just the state regulators or the CFPB. It is Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, CFPB. They all come, not CFPB, FHA. They all come in and do their own audits. And I've heard people audit or compliance people say they've got rooms at their offices for these people just to come in and camp out if they need to or want to. And it's a thing. So you have audits of some sort going on often all the time.
All the
Yes.
time. Yes, all the time. I would venture to guess every lender has at least a handful of exams going on at any point in time. So
So, Marty, what made you decide to have this be your profession and how you'd spend the days of your life? What brought you to this point? I'm
Uh,
only partly kidding. Tell
that
us,
is
please.
that
How the
is a
hell did this
great
happen?
question. And yeah, I never imagined. I spent my 20s working for American Airlines. I just loved to travel and
Uh-huh.
wanted to be in the travel industry until I realized that there's no money to be made in the travel industry. I got my bachelor's in business and marketing, and I went into marketing for Washington Mutual back in the day. Ended up after they gobbled up all of the companies they were gobbling up and all their M&A activity, ended up laid off. I was in the middle of a refinance. It's kind of a funny story, so I'll be quick, but I was in the middle of a refinance of my first home from 8% trying to get 6.5%, okay, which I thought I was winning. And I was laid off, but I had a temporary gig with WAMU till I was actually going to be termed. I called my loan officer who had helped me buy my first house, and I said, "Hey, I'm trying to get refinanced. And by the way, I don't have a job in 30 days, so I got to get this done quick." And he's like, "Hey, I might be able to help you refi. I can really help you with a job." Turned out to be
Oh,
David
perfect.
Mack,
Oh, wow.
who was
Oh,
one of the founding owners, the original owners of American Pacific Mortgage.
that's funny.
And I interviewed with him and Kurt Reisig, and I became a transition coordinator for American Pacific Mortgage, and that involved compliance and operations and integrating new branches into our company. And 23 years later, here I am, Chief Compliance Officer. So I
Wow.
will confess, I tried to get out of compliance several times in my career.
So we have a comment from Rick here. It says, "Good question about how'd you get here, but she's great. All capital letters, Marty, at it. Industry is lucky to have her." And we would totally agree because again, for so long, compliance was scary, regulators is scary. All of
Mm-hmm.
that was an unknown. It felt very far removed from us as loan officers. And I think it's really important that we are not feeling that way. It needs to be something that we work together on, that we all want to be compliant and that we're trying, and that we can have a conversation with somebody who actually knows the rules, who might be able to interpret them better than we can, and have there not be a big wall between us. And you are definitely the epitome of that, 100%. So,
Oh,
really
thank you.
glad.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Well, I think it's great to collaborate. We're not, compliance doesn't have to be the, the police force of the lender. We're here to help, we're here to support, and I always I always say, look, just ask the question before doing it. I know in a lot of sales roles, people want to just act and then beg for forgiveness later, but loan officers, this is your license. This is your livelihood. We're here to help support and protect that, and the company's licenses as well. But we can
Yeah.
often say not no, but well, how about doing it this way? Or how about this solution? And I think that compliance really needs to be solution oriented because there are ways to do things while
Legit.
being compliant.
Yep.
And you just got to stop and ask the question
I
first.
had one of those come up last week where I just had a gut feeling that the rental property that my client was refinancing had someone they were related to in the property. Just my spidey sense kind of kicked in and just the answer she gave. And I dug in. I said, well, you know what I'm going to do? I went and got the letter that they have to sign at the closing. It states, I certify that I will never live in the property and no relative of mine will ever live in the property. And I sent that letter to them and I go, listen, this is a letter you're going to sign at closing. Before I proceed, I want to make sure you're comfortable signing this letter. And she's like, no, I don't feel comfortable signing that letter. And I said, that's great, no problem. We're going to go
Mm-hmm.
just a different direction. It's going to be a little more complicated. You're going to have to give me
Mm-hmm.
a little bit more paperwork. I'm going to lower your loan amount a little bit, but not a lot. And then we can still make it happen. So that worked
Right.
out. But it was just that spidey sense that told me, this could be an issue. Because you don't want
Right.
the client being in a position where I need this money. And the only way to get this money is by signing this lie
Mm-hmm.
because people will. in a desperate situation sign it when they
Right.
really don't want to. So
I
Right.
would just like to point out yet again that there is value in loan officers who have a spidey sense, which no matter how you do it, AI is never going to have that. It is never, you are never going to be able to replace a human with a computer when it comes to this stuff. I get this feeling in my same thing, spidey sense, pit in my stomach, where I just, and it doesn't matter. Someone can have 850 credit scores, and I get this feeling like, not a good risk. Don't push it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
That matters. It's so important. So,
Yeah.
okay, so it is uh remember the guy, Christopher Gallo, who was indicted? He was number one and two in Scotsman Guide, the best LOs in the country, biggest volumes, etc., for 2 years in a row. And then he was indicted in a mortgage fraud case. Yeah. So it was interesting. I didn't realize it. I pulled up and read the entire brief about their objection to one of the counts, which was one of the things they're charged with is identity theft. And so they were objecting to this. And just for the record, that motion was denied by the judge. They're still charged with it. But I also saw that Countrywide, my God, well, Cross Country, they had paid him a $2.1 million signing bonus in
Ooh.
2023. He was doing mortgage fraud from 2018 to 2023. Cross Country Mortgage pays him $2.1 million. And then when he was indicted in 2024, it says that they terminated him, but there was a 36-month clawback period in that $2.1 million, and they want their money back. So they're fighting about that because their original request for arbitration was denied, and then his attorney was saying something to the effect of, "Oh, he has so much to deal with. I mean, why would you even come after him right now?" The whole thing is madness. But I didn't like. Am I out of the loop on these signing bonuses?
I think
2.1
I'm out of the loop.
million freaking dollars? What?
yeah,
That's
I got one of those, Audrey.
that's
2.1.
And
Mine
you're
wasn't
still
quite
here.
2.1.
Right.
and you
Yeah. So, okay. So
that
then,
sounds like a lot. Again, I'm just the compliance person here, but that sounds like a very large signing
and they're
bonus.
complaining about freaking LO comp.
Mm.
Like, oh, LO comp costs too much. Are you kidding me? Then I saw this post on Reddit from some guy who was like, I locked in rates with this loan officers as they offered free float downs and no application fee. I was randomly Googling the loan officer's name today and came across an article that he was involved in some large-scale mortgage fraud scheme. Do I need to be concerned? Should I be switching to a different bank? I'm like, what? So the comments on Reddit were, get the hell out, run for your life, get rid of all of it, go to a different company, a different person. Anyway,
Good job, Reddit community.
I know, but uh, the fact that people go to that as their source of information, I thought was
Mm.
interesting, but also, you know, Google yourself occasionally, see what comes up under your name, right?
Although it does bring up a good point, because if you were to go to NMLS Consumer Access, which is
Uh-huh.
where we have to disclose our NMLS IDs everywhere, but you wouldn't see any fraud cases or anything legal action wise against a person on NMLS Consumer Access unless they've already been convicted
Indicted.
and
Convicted. Yeah. Yeah, because
there's
we
a
pulled
consent order or something that shows up on NMLS. So
Mhm.
it's almost as though NMLS in these types of situations is it's not helpful at all because
Right.
a
Wow.
consumer could it appears as though Christopher Gallo is still licensed and able
Yep.
to operate if you just look at NMLS consumer access. So there's a huge gap there, but
But at
also
the
he
same
hasn't
time,
been
he's
convicted yet.
innocent till
Or
proven guilty.
exactly. So there's a big time gap that these kinds of things can happen in.
But wouldn't you, I mean, Marty, I mean, let's say Kevin's indicted for some monster mortgage fraud scheme. Aren't you going to fire him immediately if you can?
Well,
Probably in
Personally,
a really
yes.
nice way, but yeah, bottom line, she
Oh
let
my
my ass
God.
go.
If
Yeah.
the research appeared to be accurate, then yes, I would respectfully withdraw my application.
Yeah. Yeah. It is. I just think that has so much hair on it just because, again, it was such a huge
And
amount of
wait,
fraud. I
and if
mean,
the LO was applying to come to your company and had said indictment against them, but was not convicted, would they have to disclose that as part of the application to come on board? Or because as a company that's
Yes,
hiring,
most employment applications will ask, well,
it says, have you convicted a lot of times?
yeah, yeah.
oh,
Um,
oh,
yeah, again, that could fall through the cracks
isn't that
because
crazy?
if there's no conviction, it's not going to show up on it's not going to show up anywhere
Yeah,
really, unless you
but
Google it.
right.
And how often are you, Googling everybody you plan to hire?
It's
It's
funny.
not a bad idea.
It's,
I was
but
trying to
then
find.
there are HR and legal consequences, I'm sure. Again, I'm not an attorney, but check
I
with your
used
HR and legal departments.
I used to work for back in my days before I was in audit. I was actually working as a bank branch, and we hired a teller, and she came in like day one. She was like spectacular, like oh my God, like she just took it over right away, boom, boom, boom. And then the next day, she called in and said, "I have to quit. I've been arrested." And then we looked it up, and she had been arrested. She had a history of embezzlement and all this other stuff. Like,
Mm,
thank God she got caught that night. Um, that we would have been really in trouble. But
yeah.
Okay, so I know what I
that's
wanted to.
pre-Google though, back in those days.
So they were talking about in the brief that was filed in court. So they were accused of a whole bunch of counts of a whole bunch of things, but falsifying loan origination documents for sure, stating that listed borrowers are the primary residents of certain properties when in fact these properties were intended to be used as rental or investment properties. Um, but then they were talking about how they apparently were bunking like not HOA certs, well, partly HOA certs, but also like forging letters about from property managers saying of HOAs saying that things were fine when they weren't. I mean, it was
Oh, wait, I can do that to make my loans close?
okay. I'm just gonna say one more time. They were indicted federally, for God's sake. Get a grip. Jeez Louise. Uh, okay.
Yeah, that's
So
why, every lender, really needs and wants to have a really strong suspicious activity process. Talk about that spidey sense. That spidey sense really, should be in everybody, every employee, because you've got to be able to have a process for reporting suspicious activity. And then, of course, it has to be investigated properly and all. But where it starts is, you know, with all of the employees, anybody that's touching that file.
yeah,
Hmm.
exactly. And there can't be some, oh, hierarchy that interferes with that, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Okay, I also want to talk about, we want to talk about the DOJ rolled back the rules around disparate treatment. And we just want to talk about what that means to us and
A
whether it
disparate
changes
impact,
anything.
not disparate
So,
treatment.
treatment, impact, all of it. So,
Mhm.
Marty, can you pretty please speak to all that for us?
Um, Yeah, so the DOJ, they recently published a final rule eliminating liability for disparate impact discrimination for organizations that receive federal money. And so, one might think, okay, does that apply to us? Does that not? But I think without splitting hairs, the bottom line is that intentional discrimination is still against the law.
Hmm.
We're still, you know, in the mortgage industry, mortgage lenders, we still have to take to heart our fair lending practices and ensure that whatever we're doing um, uh, overtly through policy, every layer of what we do has to comply with fair lending laws, Fair Housing Act, ECOA, UMDA. And it's just, again, the right thing to do from a business perspective. Everybody deserves equal access to credit, and making sure we're doing everything we can to reach underserved, communities, encouraging people to apply. It doesn't, fair, fair lending doesn't mean you have to qualify everybody. It means you have to give them a shot. You have to give them a chance. You have to give them equal access. And so, in my opinion, this this doesn't change what we do in
Right.
practice fundamentally. It does not change what we do.
Perfect. So, and again, there's always the legal position, and then there's the be a decent human position, which if
Mhm.
you just stick with that, then it really doesn't matter what the Department of Justice does or doesn't do, right?
Right.
And I think we're hearing the same thing out of the CFPB, even as they've made some changes. They have done nothing to take away our obligation to be fair, to do the right thing, to make sure that we are, to your point, offering the opportunity to be a homeowner to everyone, etc.
Mhm.
So I think that the conversations are it's important to understand the nuance of it, and that okay, so they're not going to, and disparate treatment and impact was often a little confusing anyway. I mean, just um it was hard to wrap your brain around because it wasn't quite like just discrimination. It was all these
Mhm.
other things too. So again, offer homeownership to everyone as an option. Doesn't matter, right? So,
Right.
and also important to note, you and I were talking about this earlier, to always remember that there is a 5-year look back on all these regulations. So some
Mhm.
other group of people could come in and start looking at things and go, you did that wrong, and you did that wrong, and you did that wrong. So you don't want to stray too far from
Oh,
where,
wait,
Right.
just because the
It,
CFPB is not in full force right now doesn't mean they're not going to come right back in 2 and 3.5 years.
I mean,
right, exactly. And yeah, what we do today, may really matter 5 years from now. So we can't just, you know, operate in the moment. We have to look backwards, we have to look forward. And the CFPB may not be what it looks like today. It could go away and come back as something completely different. But we can't be ignorant to think that we can just do an about face and do whatever the heck we want, and we won't be examined for that, 4, 5, 6 years from now. We
Right.
just have to really
I
remember that what we do today matters and be forward thinking about that.
And I think for most of us, and especially for people who take the time to watch Mortgage Pros 411 or to do something beyond the 8 hours they're required to every year for their license, most of us, we just want to do the right thing anyway. I
Hmm.
mean, okay, occasionally you might make a mistake, but if your intent is let's do this right, and that I feel from what the people we talk to and the people in our NMLS classes, etc., that's the sense we get. It's the people who are that you don't see. They don't come to they don't come to events for the industry. They hide in their places and they do nefarious things, and it's not good. They don't care anyway,
I mean,
right?
like the
Hmm.
ones that walk up to us after we teach about RESPA and say, "Hey, I really like the way you teach. If I handed you 1,000 or a client, can you give me a referral fee?"
Okay. Yeah, the RESPA thing's a whole nother issue. Okay, just and
What
we are
is it
out of
about
time.
RESPA that just doesn't stick in people's
It
brains?
does not
I
stick
don't
in people's
know.
heads.
I don't know what it is.
It's so weird. And that's a 50-year-old law, for God's sake.
I
None of us existed before that existed. And so how do we not understand that? But anyway, here we
Yeah,
are, and we
we
don't.
are.
And
Yeah.
there you go. So they yeah. So is there anything else that you think we should know about compliance and going forward into 2026, Marty?
Um, your compliance officer can be your best friend. So no matter where you work, engage with your compliance department. They do want to support you. Trust me, they do. And again, they love getting the question before you actually go out and do something. So I would say, just cozy up to your compliance officer, take compliance to heart, and I think, it just makes our industry better.
And if
The
you're
few
thinking of
times I've
changing
gotten,
companies, think about what is their compliance department like? It's
yeah,
actually a consideration when we're considering where we're going to work. It's a good thing to think about ahead of time. Kevin, you were going to say something?
I was going to say with our particular compliance company, when I get a call from compliance, I actually like, oh, this is a good thing because they're looking out for me, not, oh, I'm in trouble thing. So it's
Yeah, that's a good take. That's
yeah.
a good take.
Although I will say a few years ago, before I knew Marty, the first time we were going to a summit or something, and I knew I was going to meet her, and I was scared because I'm like, oh God, we do this show every week. I mean, the fact that we just do our show every week is really remarkable. But anyway, that all worked out just fine, but I was literally afraid.
Right.
Anyway, oh God. All
Thanks
right,
so much
kids.
for having me.
We
Appreciate it.
loved it. We
Thanks for
really
coming on.
appreciate it. As things come up in the mortgage industry, make sure that you keep us abreast of what that all looks like. And just as my ever not never ending reminder to all of our listeners, even though it's December, you don't get the whole month off. And mortgage applications, MBA's mortgage applications for last week showed that purchases are up 19% year over year, and refinances are up 80%, 88% year over year. So if you are not capturing those kinds of numbers in your numbers, you need to do something different. Well, all right. So we will see you guys next week. Thank you so much, Marty, for being here. Go get a loan, fund it, close it, help a borrower. Have a great one. Bye.